Hey everyone, this is Big for Life, and finally I'm doing a preview of this figure that I've been talking about in a lot of my reviews for a long time. This is Optimus Prime from Transformers Bumblebee movie. This is threezero/3A, the company, and this is their, I guess, third release, will be their third release, and in their DLX scale collectible figure, which is a massive scale. They're about 12 inches tall. Well, he's about 12 inches tall. And it's now non-transforming figure, so let me get that out the way. And this is a preview in the sense that this was a review sample that one of the guys from 3A, who that company is now split from these threezero, and now is now going under the name Underverse, and they're doing other licensing and stuff like that. So kind of sad to hear that, but one of the guys at 3A was at TFCon DC and had this guy to show, and then they let us, Toy Dojo, have one for review. So I apologize for taking so long to review this, but thanks again to the 3A groups, aka the Underverse group, for letting us have a review copy. I'll be sad when I have to send this over to Toy Dojo again. So, starting off the packaging, it's a massive box, very, very big, but can barely get in my shooting area, but it's really nicely done. So this is officially licensed. You can see authentic Transformers, really great stylized artwork on the front, Optimus Prime. It also has a window, so if you or flap, so if you are a mint and seal box collector, this might be for you. And I think it has like magnets here to keep it closed, and you can see again on this left side, really nice artwork or render while you see all of Optimus Prime in his glory and his packaging on this side. On the side, there's really not much to talk about, and again, this is the Transformers Bumblebee movie version of Optimus Prime. Nothing on the bottom really, and on the back, not much. They do say this is not a toy. But yeah, this is definitely a really high-end collectible. It's around $190 or so. But if you can get one, definitely I would highly recommend that. So let's get him out of the packaging. All right, so this is what you get when you get him out of the actual clamshell. But he does come with protective plastic, like I said, over top of the base, as well as over top of Optimus himself. So to keep his really nice, high-quality paint job, which is also weathered. Really secure, and so it gets to you defect free, right? Aside from the defects that they obviously wanted you to see. So, like I said, he comes with his ion blaster. We'll take a look at this first. Very nicely detailed. It doesn't have any like playability to it, but it's really nicely weathered in this kind of gunmetal look. I never noticed like some of the details in the movie. He's in it for quite a bit, but you don't get to notice a lot of the details unless you rewatch it over and over. It looks like this is kind of like almost like a bayonet. Part of his ion blaster. You can see his clip and everything like that. It would have been cool to get some lighting effects on this. We do get some in the head itself, but it would have been nice to have some on the blaster. So we'll put this off to the side. So let's look at his extra hands. Here, let's zoom in just a little bit. So you can see he has kind of what these, I think they're called the relaxed hands. And these are all molded pieces of plastic. They're not articulated at all. And so they are a little delicate. Some parts of here you can see are kind of thin. Just be careful with that. But they're pretty high quality. They are attached at ball joints at the bottom. Put this off to the side. I think these are what they're calling the spread hands. All right. These are his gun hands, or I forget exactly what they're called, but either hand can hold the gun, and you can just slide it in. You have to flex it just a little bit, but you can get the finger right around the trigger. So we'll show that off later. And lastly, his command hand. And again, I don't remember if he does this. I imagine that he does do this. I know he directs a couple times in the movie. I think he like tells Bumblebee or something like that. But yeah, he only comes with one of these, which is an interesting choice. But I guess you really don't need two command hands. So zooming out, before we get into Optimus, let's talk about the base itself. Scooch down a bit. So this is basically the same exact base that we got with Bumblebee. I know I didn't do a review of that just because I didn't collect them initially. I think I will go back and do a review of him now. That's just how much I like this figure in this line, is that I'll go back and do an old review. But instead of having 3A here, it's a threezero, and then the Bumblebee logo, and the logo itself are in blue as opposed to yellow. The way the stand works is that you snap this back here, and then you snap this part up front. This is on a sliding joint. You can lock it into place with this little piece here. Let's go ahead and lock this in. You can see just how it works, like so. And then again, you lock this in by rotating that down. This piece here is extending. Oh, sorry. And to lock it in place, you just leave it. But if you want to move it, you just pull down on this piece here. There's a bunch of different ratchets in here. And then at the top, you pull this out. And so it doesn't rotate. You need to pull it out and rotate it and lock it into place. So that makes it very secure as opposed to some kind of friction joint or ratcheted joint, spring loaded, just because this figure is so heavy that you definitely want it to be very, very secure here. So this is a very secure base. This does work in conjunction with the figure on a port on his butt. So like this, we can go ahead and talk there. You just pull this cover off and plugs into his butt very securely, and he's not going anywhere. So you can do a lot of cool poses like his iconic movie pose that they replicate in the Bumblebee movie, where he's jumping through the air with his ion blaster. Alright, so let's go ahead and put this back on his butt, and then we'll get into the main part of the review, which is Optimus himself. So very nice stand. So I like that they include it, but he is pretty stable, so I don't know that he really needs it. I'm saying that while having some difficulty keeping him straight. Oh, it's because his toe was not flat. All right, there we go. So I know some people will want to know just how tall he is. I believe he's 28.5 centimeters, which is like 11, maybe and a half inches. His weight is just over 2 pounds, 2 pounds, 0.6 ounces, at least according to my kitchen scale. So he's a very, very tall figure. And I like this scale a lot. I didn't know that I would, but I think this size is larger than Masterpiece size, but I really like the size of it. It feels super substantial, feels like a centerpiece very easily, and it just looks it. I mean, just let's take a quick look at him doing a quick 360 just in his static out of the box pose. Well, he's kind of leaning a little bit, but they did a phenomenal job with the detailing of this guy. Just trying to make him as movie accurate as possible. They must have had access to the renders, obviously being an official figure. But everything, including his like kind of backpack section here, all these details, all the gears, parts of his legs. It's just phenomenal looking how well they've done this and captured the realistic look that the Bumblebee movie was trying to capture way more than the original Michael Bay movies, right? Like these feel like they had heft and could really exist in real life. Looking very close, you can see just how nice the weathering is as well. There's weathering on all parts of his body. Some nice details here, like some battle damage and scuffing and some soot and grime that you would imagine a battle-worn Optimus would have endured over his, millennia or more of fighting. He does have rubber tires. They don't move around or anything like that, but they are nice, hard rubber tires. Yeah, he just looks amazing. So obviously we don't have to go into transformation. So the first thing I'll do before I go into articulation is do some comparisons. So obviously I don't have a lot of non-transforming figures, so I'll just go ahead and compare him to some other Optimi in my collection. Here is Unique Toys Challenger, I believe. Their Age of Extinction, if I'm not mistaken, Optimus Prime. And you can see they're close to head-to-head. If I probably straighten out his legs, they'd be head-to-head. Here is, this is a Legendary Toys version, but this is essentially the same as the movie Masterpiece Optimus. I just got this one because, in addition to my original one, because the painting is so much nicer, and some of the tolerances are better. And some of the tolerances are worse, but that looks really nice. This is the only other Bumblebee movie Prime that I have access to. This is their, I think, Voyager Optimus Prime, I forget, from the Studio series. And I like this figure in general, but obviously just a different class and scale with the 301. Here he is with movie masterpiece Bumblebee, kind of crouching down in kind of a pose, so I guess not a great comparison here. Here, let me straighten him out a little bit. Also not a great figure, but I think he'd be too small anyway to scale with Optimus. And lastly, the 3A/threezero Bumblebee, which honestly, initially when I saw this figure, I was like, whatever, but I had to go back and buy him after buying him because I can't have him without the Bumblebee and the rest of the line. So they look really good together. I think that scale is probably right on the mark. All right, so let's get into what everybody's been probably kind of waiting for, is kind of the articulation test, right? So, oh, sorry, let me talk about his battery first before we get into that. Sorry. So you can pull up on his helmet, this part here, and you can see into his brain's central processing unit. He has a little piece of LED here, and it requires 2 AG13 batteries. So these are the only batteries you need with him. And it has a little button there. You just slide that back in. Close that up. And how it works, just like with Bumblebee, is by pressing his kind of forehead, his recessed forehead thing. And you can even see in my bright lighting that he lights up really nicely. Really makes his eyes pop. That's the only real part of playability that he has, aside from his articulation. His chest doesn't open up to reveal a matrix or anything like that, which is a shame. And he doesn't have any other LED features, just the one in the head. But once again, let's talk about the articulation. His head is on a ball peg that goes into, I believe, the base. But then you can also see his neck, the area around his neck is also on a ball joint, I believe. I'm guessing on some of this stuff, just because I can't see into it. But based on the way it moves, it definitely feels like a ball joint on both those. So 2 points of articulation there already just in the head. His shoulders are one of the nicer parts. So he has a little flap here that can move out of the way. There we go, hold on. When you want to raise his arm, you can see that this flap will kind of move out of the way here. You can see it on this side a little bit easier. I think this side is a little bit tighter. But you can get his shoulder. There's a joint in here, as well as a shoulder joint in the shoulder area itself. So there's hinges there, and then he also has a hinge here that you can see rotates out in this big cylinder hunk here. So he has a nice butterfly joint. He can rotate around. He has a bicep swivel. This flap moves around to give you a little bit more range on his arm. He has 2 points of articulation in his elbow. He has an upper one up in here in the bicep, and then he has a lower one down near the forearm. He also can rotate at the forearm itself. And just look at these details, all these pipes and gears and pistons over here, like these belts and stuff like that. I mean, I think that would be kind of dangerous to have that kind of stuff exposed as a robot, but maybe that's just me. And then his wrist is on a ball joint itself, a ball peg. So that's where you can pop this out. They're very tight, so just be careful. And there are some smaller pieces around here, so just be careful about that. And you can see that there's a hinge in addition to that ball peg. Be careful of these pieces. These pieces around here are a little thin, so just be careful, especially when you're plugging in a new hand. There we go. So that's the articulation with his arms. He does have 2 hinges, I believe, not a ball joint, but a hinge here. And I believe he has another hinge there, which is that's just his upper torso bend. But it's not a ball joint because you can't go diagonally, I don't believe. Yeah, I believe it's 2 separate hinges, one like this and one like that. His waist. I believe this, wait, maybe this upper one, oh, the upper one's a ball joint. Yeah, you can feel that. And then the lower one is the one with 2 hinges. So it goes forward and to the side. It doesn't rotate all the way around, at least I don't believe it does. Or maybe I'm just running into some stuff like the hip skirts. But, oh, you might be able to get, no, yeah, because this part here is what causes the blockage. So you can rotate about that much, which I think is still a good amount, about maybe 40 degrees or so to either side. But the lower joint is the one that also has a hinge here and a swivel there. But the upper torso, I believe, is a ball joint. Yeah, feels like it. His hip skirts on the side are on double hinges, which can rock up or rock down. The forward and back hip skirts are also on 2 ball joints here and a hinge. So you can move that. So this is the only thing that I think, at least on this copy, tolerances could be a little bit better. They do seem to come off just a little bit, but only when I try to go to extreme angles with it. Same thing on the back. I think it has pretty much the same setup. Oh, it's just 1 ball joint and 1 hinge back here. Yeah. But doing that allows you to get a good amount of range in his legs. So you can see his legs go out pretty far, not quite 90 degrees. He does have a very small amount of thigh swivel, not a ton. I wish we could have a little bit more. He does have very human-like thighs, just like the model in the movie. So his legs can go up to about here before it starts running into stuff. But you actually have a secondary hinge here. So this whole leg assembly will come down. And it has like what feels like detents. Here, let me scooch out just a little bit. You might be able to see it better. You can see right here that sliding section. So that when you get it out here, you can get way higher. Probably even higher than that if you were to take some time and move the hip skirts out the way. Same thing going backwards, like so. You can get pretty far. So really great articulation. It's very SH figure arts-ish in terms of that like kind of lowering joint on the hips. We talked about the knee swivel, the thigh swivel. Let's go around this way. You can see his double jointed knees. 1 in here and 1 down here. The only other thing I wanted to mention with the knee joints is that this, once you actually use both knee joints, you can see this part kind of slide out and kind of fill in some of the gaps, which is a nice piece of engineering, right? So you don't have a lot of unsightly gaps coming up. I think this is spring-loaded, actually, but it's nice that it does do that. All right, coming down to the lower leg, he has ankle tilt, which is pretty substantial. You can go both in and out, which is always appreciated. He has some pieces here that move, this one here and this one here. You can get out the way. This one as well. 3 pieces here of armor that kind of move out the way. They're not all that necessary, except this one to get the toe tilted forward. You don't really get much downward tilt, like very slight downward tilt. And then you have toe tilt here. So yeah, I think that's it for his complete articulation test or demonstration. I am going to do something I usually don't do, and I'm going to cut here and actually just try to pose him in a number of different poses that demonstrate his dynamic range. I think he deserves it since we don't have transformation anyway, and I think he deserves to be shown just how much he can do with his posing. So let's just do some generic ones first. Like, if I got this skirt out the way without flipping these out, he can basically go all the way down like this. You can probably go a little bit more, but I'm worried about his hip skirts coming off. But that has more flexibility than I do for sure, and I think most humans do. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't reveal any gaps, or like at least any major gaps here. There's all this hidden detail in the back that is all covered up, which is really, really nice. this just looks phenomenal, and the way that they are able to accomplish this is really quite nice. He can reach all the way down to his toes. He can do some definite yoga poses if he needed to. So I think that's the only other thing I wanted to show in terms of this articulation before I start cutting and just showing off a number of different poses and getting this hip skirt back on. So recently T-Man978, one of my buddies, also a reviewer, did a comparison of MP44, his articulation with the Yamaguchi Revoltech one, to show off just how much articulation that MP44 has, and I thought I'd do the same. So these are going to be recreations of poses that the amazing Yamaguchi one showed in his product images, and here's one with his gun here. And I think he recreates this really, really well. You can just see how dynamic that looks. I think that he pulls out this pose pretty well as well, with his upper body and his butterfly joints really being displayed here. I think it's kind of an odd choice to be holding a rifle like this, but you know, I'm not the poser. So let's move on to the next test. All right, pose number 3. You can see here I'm trying to mimic also, because he has double knee joints just like the Revoltech one. I'm trying to make use of the same joints here, especially with the ab crunch and the multiple ab and waist torso pieces that they have, showing the stability off with his toe joints as well. And again, this kind of is a weird pose to have with a rifle. You would normally probably hold it up near the barrel over here, but anyways, I think he pulls this off quite well. Pose number 4. This is the only one that posed so far a slight challenge, mostly with this positioning of his leg here, because he doesn't have that much thigh rotation. It would have been the angle here on the leg is off. It should be kind of like tilted like this a bit more, but I think the point still comes across that he still can maintain a very deep knee bend kneeling pose with his foot back here supporting his weight and look very good doing so. All right, I lost count of what pose this is, but this is the one kind of from the original Transformers movie where he's gonna kind of strike Megatron with his double fists. I think he pulls off this pose quite well. All right, here's one using the figure stand, and I actually had to stand up to film this, so sorry about the instability here. I think this looks really good. So Amazing Yamaguchi tried to recreate the kind of Ultra Magnus pose from the cover of the Transformers movie. And it's kind of awkward because they have the Energon axe instead of the rifle, and they also, for some reason, transposed it horizontally. So he should actually be facing the other way, but I'm trying to recreate all the Yamaguchi poses. So this is as close as I can get since he doesn't have an Energon axe. But I think it looks pretty good. It's kind of an awkward pose, honestly, any way you pose it. But the original one looks really weird because of the weird perspective, and the Yamaguchi and Optimus one just look weird trying to recreate that. Okay, last pose. This one was kind of difficult to do, mostly because his upper body can't twist as much as you might like. You know, he can get to about 45 degrees using both those joints. But the iconic movie pose, he's more almost like horizontal at the upper body, at the torso. I mean, not perpendicular at the torso. So it's a little bit hard to make that pose, but I still think he pulls it off quite well. And I think it works really well with this flight pose, except for the fact that you kind of have to tilt the flight stand or action stand at an angle to make the slant a little bit more accurate. Oops, sorry about that. But yeah, that's it for the review. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed it. The only things I would point out are that you want to be careful when posing this guy. Obviously, there's a lot of great paint detail, but there's a lot of articulation that can kind of run into each other. Do try to point all that out. Just be very mindful when you use that. The only things I would really like are maybe more thigh swivel, and then maybe, again, a little bit more upper torso swivel if that were possible. Lastly, I would love to have the foot be able to angle up more. Honestly, from the poses I thought I would need it for, like the kneeling poses, I didn't actually need it, but it would have been nice to have some more of that. But otherwise, let me know in the comment section what you guys think of this guy. I know he's not a transforming, he's a non-transforming transformer, but I just think he looks super epic. I love him. I keep him on my desk. He's one of like the you know, 5 figures I actually keep on my desk nonstop just to look at because he just looks so majestic, and he's fun to pose and everything like that. I am also really excited about the other versions of this figure that are coming out, or this character that are coming out, like the Toy World Freedom Leader, and then the new one from Toy Lab looks potentially even better than the Toy World one. The Toy World one I think is actually slightly taller than this, which is amazing, and transforms. I don't think it's as accurate, obviously, since it has to compromise with some transformations, but the Toy Lab one looks phenomenal. So I might just have a bunch of these. You'll see a lot of these coming out very soon, and I'll do comparisons when I can. Lastly, I will actually be going back and doing the Bumblebee review and doing the Blitzwing review on this, and continuing this DLX scale series from threezero. Yeah, threezero. And I can't wait, since their Soundwave and Ravage were just shown off not too long ago, and they're coming out for I think $200. So for $190 or so for this guy, if you like Optimus Prime, I don't see why you wouldn't want this in your collection. And I think for $190, he's worth every penny, just for all the stuff you get, all the detail, all the like high quality stuff that you get. The posability, again, is unbelievable in a lot of different areas. While it is lacking in some, I think overall, I think you'll be very, very happy with this guy. So glad to have this guy in my collection, or will be having this once it retail releases. But having this preview in my collection for the last couple months has been a joy. All right, that's all for today, everyone. Hope you have a good one.